Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the beautiful world. Good to see everybody, and nice to see my fabulous guests and co-host. I've got two very handsome men with me today. Wow.
Where are they?
Well, they're here. So nice to see you both. We're gonna let some people stream in and join us. Everybody, if you're joining for the first time, this is Build Crew Live. So, hello, I'm Ryan Carson, one of your hosts, and we come and do this every week to basically try to make you a more powerful, a more happy, a better equipped developer who codes with agents. So, welcome. We've already got some people joining from South Haven, Michigan. Good to see you, everybody. Wherever you're calling in from, pop it in the chat, and we've got some more folks calling in. So let's go and introduce everybody real quick. So Torsten, hello, good to have you. Tell everybody who you are.
Yeah, I'm Torsten. I'm an engineer on the AMP team and one of the creators of AMP. So I've been using it probably the longest, here on this call.
From the moment it was deployed and came alive. Mike, good to see you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm an engineer and builder, mainly in the Elixir ecosystem, working as a director of engineering for a company in Denver, based here in Chicago, and been using AMP for a long time. Love it, use it quite a bit, and always trying to, just sharpen the saw and get a little bit better with it. So thanks for having me on.
No problem. I think the saw is pretty sharp, which is why we invited you to come back. We're gonna show the Build Crew leaderboard, and you're always on it, so that's kind of fun. We've got some folks tune in from Portland, Oregon. Good to see you, Dan. Thanks for being here. Ridgetop, as always, good you're here. Appreciate you all tuning in. If you're watching, pop in the comments, tell us where you're calling in from, where you're joining from, and we'll call you out. Also, don't forget to join Build Crew. It's our free community for anybody building with agents. So if you're a dev, you use an agent, you can use any agent. You don't have to use AMP. You could be using anything, Cloud Code, Cursor, Windsurf, Gemini, CLI, whatever. You're welcome. And so just head to buildcrew.team, join. We do throw $100 in your account just to kind of make life a little better as well. So we're going to get started in a second. Want to call out some more friends. We've got folks joining from Malaysia and Chile as well, which is really fun. So welcome everybody from around the world. So the goal of the show is to give you tips, give you strategies for coding better with agents, right? All three of us on the call basically do this all day. So whether we like it or not, we have some things to share. So Torsten, why don't you kick us off with something you're kind of learning, something that you are thinking about? Over to you.
Yeah. So if we look at my screen, which there it is. So I picked out 3 threads. They're all from yesterday. And I picked them out because I want to use them to bang the same drum I've been, banging or drumming on for the past 2 months, which is, I think, small focused threads, or let's call them in general invocations of an agent, are a lot better than, or lead to better results. And I think one reason for that is a smaller context window has better quality. Like every paper shows this, there's degradation the longer the context window is. But the more meta thing going on is, if you have a small thread, that means you have a small focused tasks with clear inputs and outputs, or like a goal. And I just want to walk you through these to show this is actual work I did yesterday, and I want to show you how I approach something like this, right? Nice. So what I was debugging yesterday, in case you don't know, I think if you go to ampco.com install, to set the scene here, you can install AMP CLI with this, right? And we recommend this, the curl to bash thing, or if you want to, and I know there's people who say, like, this is a security hazard, you shouldn't do this. Go and read this. Go and read through this and then invoke everything by hand if you want to. The point is, if you do this, as opposed to npm, npx, pnpm yarn, there's no JavaScript package manager installed, which on our end makes it easier to update AMP for you, because handling all these package managers is hard. So yesterday I was kind of digging into this. And so what I noticed is that, hey, like we make this request somewhere. I can't see this here, but I highlighted. This was in the VS Code extension. I highlighted some text. I said,
Mhm.
like, this is like 20 lines, and I said, look at this. Do you know the npm registry API from where we fetch our version information to check whether there's a new update? And do you know the API enough, to know? I think my English is not the best here, to know whether we can modify the request or the URL to only fetch the data we want instead of all versions. Because I saw loop in the code, and I was like, why do we loop through all versions? And we release 15 times a day. That's a lot of versions, right?
Hmm.
And it says, like, yeah, you can modify this. If you do this, it came back with this. And what's not shown here is I didn't use this URL to make sure that this is actually what it returns. And then I said, hey, let's do this.
Hmm.
But check the output first, right? So here it runs curl. It checks this. This is everything we need, just the latest version. It updated the code, small change, 8 lines changed. And
So
then
let me ask you real quick. So when you saw that first diff, did you
this one
immediately?
here.
Yeah, did you immediately read it, or did you just let the agent crank and then you read the diff after it was all done?
I mean, here it was done. Like, this was pretty short, right? It says
Oh, yeah,
like
it came
curl,
right
then
back.
this. Yeah, it came right back, and it says this is the tiniest change, right? And then I was like, okay, I think this works. I tested it. I read through the diff. It just changes the URL and the response body. And then I said to Bragg on Slack, I was like, can you come run both and compare the size, the size reduction? And then it turns out, instead of always fetching 3.5 megabytes, we now fetch 35 bytes, which is
Not bad.
obviously
That's
a
great.
big reduction, right? So
100,000x.
yeah, and I was like, hey, give me a short commit message that puts this thing in, and it came back with a negative, like a boring one, and I was like, come on. So I ignored it, and then I found some other code that checks for updates, and I said, I don't know why I think I have the file open, and I asked, like, can we make the same optimizations here? But
Hmm.
here we need something else. And it came back and it says, actually, it doesn't work. And we ended with like a sad,
Damn.
ugh, yeah, it doesn't work. But so then end of thread. I didn't continue here, right? But
Yep.
I wanted to change something else. So I went
So
over here.
before you go to the next slide, I just want to
Yeah.
call out something cool that I think you did. So where you basically push the button to say, write a quick script to give me something. I love that you did that to show what percent you improved everything by, right? Because again, that's something you probably wouldn't do without an agent, but it was something I saw you share that in Slack. And I was like, that's
Yeah.
interesting versus you just saying, I optimized, the install. So that was cool.
Yeah, I had the actual first thing open in the browser, and I could see that it's a lot of JSON in the browser tools. But then I was like, I know that you can use this type of stuff with curl, but I'm too lazy to do it. So you just ask the agent and it does it. Like, you don't, like this templating that curl
Yeah.
allows you to do. I, would have had to look it up. So I didn't.
No.
But then I went and I realized, like, there's another thing that's hard coded, which is the name of the registry. And with npm you can have hard coded you can have a custom registry, and a user, right? I put this information, who's behind a corporate VPN, reported that it's blocked for them. They use the registry on this. Now my question is, what's a good, reliable, solid way to get this, right? And it looked at the code, it came back with this, and it says quick implementation. And I was like, what's the non-quick implementation? If this is the quick one, what's the better one? Because I read through this and I was like, okay, exec sync, npm config get registry. This could work, but then it's like, what if, is this the format? Does this always work? What if this is not installed? And, invoking a command, I don't know. So what's the non-quick? And it came back. And says, like, a robust one would have this and check for this. And I read through this, what it proposed, and said, we don't need the scope stuff, but the rest sounds good. Let's implement it. And it did it. And I read through the code, and it basically runs npm config get registry. And it has, like, this is what I was,
right.
looking out for. Like, it wants to catch, and so it doesn't blow up if npm isn't installed or whatever, right? It handles timeouts, all of that stuff. It caches it too, which is nice. So then it implements it, done. So now I knew there's a second place, because while this was running, I was using project-wide search to figure out whether registry npm.js.org is hard-coded somewhere else. And it was, right? And
you just knew that from looking.
Well, I was like,
you actually search.
Okay, what's going on here? What's the problem? And as everybody who's ever done something like this, after a few years of doing this, you're like, if we have this problem here, it's the only place where we have this problem, or do we have it somewhere else? So in my case, I had this running, and I was like, okay, where else is this? It's the same as when somebody opens a PR and says like, fix this, and there's 5 other places where we do a similar thing. Did you look at those too? So this is what I was doing in the background. And then I realized we do have another place where we check this. And the problem is we cannot share code, right? So look, like this is the Bootstrap script. So if you go here and run install and pipe it to bash, what it does is it downloads this bootstrap.ts from amcode.com/bootstrap. And then it uses bun to actually bootstrap like this CLI installation, right? So it's a completely standalone thing, which I also knew. And I'm not saying all of that stuff to say, look, guys, how much I know. I'm more saying this to drive the point home of, it's like a bob and weave type of thing with the agent, where you need to know what's going on, and then you can direct it to other stuff. And in this case, I knew what the architecture is. I knew what the context of the file is. And if I had asked it, like, oh, can you extract this to a shared thing? It would do it, but it would fail, because that's not how this code works. So when I then ended...
Engineer Wannabe, a question for you. Like, so did you use AMP to search, or did you know where to look in the code base?
I was being frugal and not spending cents on searching for the URL. I copied the URL, Command Shift F in VS Code, and like put the URL in, like registry.npm.js. No. Yeah. I wanted to double check, like, what does the actual search thing come back with? And then, okay, so now knowing what I just told you, that there's another place where we have to do this, and that I cannot use this code in this other place, I used handoff to create another small thread. And here, look, like we had 3 messages. This was nothing. And yet I didn't want it to even get confused by this somehow. So I used handoff to create a new thread, which is this one. I guess we don't show the full prompt that I typed here. We can fix this on hover, I think. But basically I said, hey, I want to take the same helper function we just added, but copied him to this new file. And I even specified the file name. And then I said something like, because we cannot share the code and it should be duplicated, blah, blah, blah. And then handoff generated this prompt for me, and handoff has gotten a lot better in the last week with these prompts. Like Nikolai did a lot of work on it. So it ended up with this, and it's just like, I just implemented this, but now blah, blah, blah. I added these helper functions. Now I want to use this, blah, blah, blah. And I specified kind of what it should do. And then it basically knocked out the code, which was exactly what I wanted it to do. It should add like an optional parameter to this, and then update all of the call sites and pass in this registry URL.
And it was only basically 2 steps. Like, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's like 1, 2, 3. Like, it's tiny, and it did it. And then I was like, can you add a comment to explain why we don't share the code? And then I tested it and I pushed it up, and that was it. So
the moral of the story is small threads.
Or you need to know what you want the agent to do. And be specific about directing it. And there's, as the 3 of us know, who have a lot of tokens, on our profile card, there's cases where you don't know what you don't know, or you don't know, or you know what you don't know, and then you send the agent off to discover some stuff, and then you do more directed stuff, right?
Yeah.
So there's like a researchy type of way of using these agents, and then there's a you implement this for me type of way.
Totally.
And
Yeah.
everything that I wrote here in these prompts, I mean, my director of engineering, like, you can confirm, like, this is the
Yeah.
type of stuff that you would say to a junior developer. You're like, hey,
Yeah.
build me these helper functions. Watch out that it doesn't blow up if the command exists.
Yeah.
And then port this over to this, and watch out that you don't share any code, because that's not how this works.
Totally.
But then the rest is you fill in the blanks. And
Yeah.
that's how I think about it.
There's a lot of watch out for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all like shaking our heads for sure. So I want to go to Mike in a second.
Yep.
Want to call out some comments. Engineer Wannabe says, yep, knowing stuff still matters,
That's true, no.
which happens a lot. We got some friends calling in from Amsterdam. Bruno, good to have you join in. Ebsta calling in from London. And
Wow.
I know we got some more friends from around the world,
Wow.
Brazil. And Tim's calling in from Minnesota. So good to have
Tim's
everybody.
all there. We should do this
Stuff
on
near
New
me.
Year's Eve, and
Yeah.
then people say like, "Oh yeah, it's all
over the world."
All right. And then Engineer Wannabe says, and then you throw away the junior's code, which does happen sometimes. If you're watching, please tell us where you're joining us from. Pop in the comments. I'd love to know where you all are from. So let's go to Mike next.
Yeah.
Would love for you to share something that you're learning, something that just how can people code better with agents?
Sure. And Thorsten we didn't plan this, but he teed this up really well. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen as well and showcase a thread that I was working in a code base that, we got to rewind a year. I had written a lot of code of this package, Jito Signal is what it's called, by hand. I just started using ChatGPT, this magic of, being able to put an idea into an LLM and have it respond. And then I shipped the code. So this was you got to, again, ancient history.
Bump up the font size for us, make it bigger if you can.
No problem.
Let's go a couple sizes.
A little bit better.
There we go.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
And so this week I had the opportunity to come back and take a look at this with our modern tools. And so I was sitting there thinking, like, what do I do? I got to I have a Formula One race car. What do I do? And I came up with this prompt. And, Thorsten's talking about how do I get back into the headspace of some code that I've written. And I opted for this approach. And I want to break it down a little bit. But first, use the Oracle. I definitely wanted to invoke that deeper GPT-5 thinking, evaluate the package. So I wrote a intentionally kind of high level. This is a research flow. I wanted to reorient myself I knew what the code did, but I wanted to get a little bit of that fresh eyes and then use subagents to write a report around each of the major features without identifying the major feature. I wanted GPT to, pick the edges that it found and write the reports themselves. So it went and did this. And I'm giving away a little bit of a secret here in that the number one language I've been writing lately is Markdown. I just crush out a lot of Markdown.
I do a lot of Markdown too.
Yeah. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. So, 3.7 million tokens. I don't even want to know what this costs. I didn't notice that until I just pulled this thread up. But that's where we're, going hard. So it wrote out all of these Markdown documents that outlined each of the features for this package. And I threw these into my into the code. I put them in this report folder. I think we exchanged a tweet, Ryan, where I've started putting things in a temp folder because it automatically excludes it from Git.
Yes, thank you. I do that now and I love it.
Super awesome. And it went through and wrote 10 reports explaining how all of these features fit together. So this was kind of the current state. And I wanted to get a snapshot of that I could then begin to work with this week as I went piece by piece to upgrade this package. So then I followed up with and this is one of, again, my favorite kind of prompts that I've used, for a while now. I've had it in different forms, but then I wanted to have that Oracle use those markdown reports that I wrote, reach into each one of them, consult, and then write me a critique, like rip it to shreds, roast this code. And then I could, once again, write a bunch of markdown reports.
Interesting.
Going into, what was wrong with it. And then I went back and forth, and this has been kind of my open source work this week. I take the pair of, here's the overview document from subagent number 1. Here's the critique from subagent number 2. I then will, use my voice, transcribe into the system of what I agree with, what I don't agree with. Hey, this is a good suggestion. No, this one, go a different direction. And I have then kicked off a number of threads to refactor, refine, and tighten up this code base using this approach. And this kind of became the foundation. There are other threads where, for instance, just to pick out the dispatch system, I went and I then created a markdown plan. I have the agent build the plan with step-by-step. Sub-agents can execute each step sequentially. And here I'm using parallel agents. So I need to, again, the tools in the toolbox, right? Because we're doing research, they can't conflict, but then specifying sequential agents to edit the code. This works really well.
Interesting.
And
okay.
I've been throwing up PRs for each of the refactorings that build on one another.
When do you go? So you read both, like you actually go
both.
through, but that means
Correct.
you read all of the pairs, and for each, like the analysis and the critique, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And then where do you? Is this also in this, like you create, like your, I guess, synthesis or like your verdict? Where does that go?
I voice transcribe it. So I then have a prompt, and I can find one in a second, but we have a prompt that says, new thread, pull in the overview, pull in the critique. I transcribe my analysis of the critique and the thread after reading it. And then I say, use the Oracle to write a plan to refactor the dispatch system.
Oh, cool.
I then will analyze that plan, and I manually go in and I edit. I'm pretty much chopping steps at that point of do this, don't do that. And then I pass that to one serial agent to actually write the code. So my markdown to code ratio is probably 5 to 1.
Yeah, same. That's interesting. Okay, so if I could summarize the flow, you basically say to the Oracle, all right, here's a feature or a package that, was written a long time ago. I want you to analyze how it works. And then you go and then say, okay, now that you know how it works, take that markdown. And now I want you to do a pretty, thorough code review on it, create a markdown on that. And then you read both, and then you create a new thread, you tag both, and then you say, make a plan. And then you read the plan, and then you probably edit the plan, and then you say probably a new thread, then implement the plan.
Correct.
Cool.
Or I usually hand off from the plan thread into a new one, and I use the context from the planning thread. From the critique and overview, I do a brand new one. I don't bridge those two. But it's a funnel. So I go really, really wide, and then I go kind of narrow it down to the surgical edits that I'm making.
So can you answer this question from Engineer Wannabe?
Yeah. So sometimes they do, sometimes they don't have code in them. And let me find a.
If you're listening to this, the question is, Engineer Wannabe says, but are those markdown files full of code? Is the question.
Sometimes in this case, it will call out a design weakness where my intent to dispatch, these are messages in the system, to be fully asynchronous and not have this synchronous bottleneck wasn't implemented correctly. Found a bug. Fantastic. Here's the example of where that bug exists. Here's why it exists. And then it uses that with line locations to the specific file for this is the code that's in the code base now, not new code that it wrote.
Yeah. And I noticed, Torsten, you were doing this as well. I'm asking, AMP and agents a lot more to write a little bit of code for me to see about how they plan to implement things a lot more. And then just like going, and then you always see the foot guns. You're like, oh, wait a second. No. So.
Yeah. I mean, Mike, how do you, okay, I'll say what the issue is, and I want to hear what you think about it. My problem sometimes is when I would ask a model to review, say, a whole subsystem, it would often come back with these suggestions that I would say are out of context, where, hey, take a look at this, and it comes back, well, the problem, we should improve this by making it parallelizable and make it run on multiple machine and fault tolerant. And you're like, get out of here.
Ridiculous.
Like, this is not. So how do you set the frame for this app? It's my hobby project. It's one server. I don't care about fault tolerance. Like, how do you do it? Is it Agents MD? Is it a prompt? What do you do?
So it depends what stage you're at in the process.
Yeah.
In the research process, I want to go as wide as possible. I want to reach for everything the model can brainstorm and know about in the question that I posed.
Yeah.
As I narrow it down into the refactors, I cut and I curate at each stage until finally the plan, MD, and then executing that plan is a lot more narrow and has that kind of extra brainstorms chopped out. So that's kind of technique number one. Number two is that I've gotten far more opinionated on the publicly exposed API to other code. So what does that interface contract look like? How is it typed? What's the shape of those methods, and how will people use them? So this is kind of fun one too. I didn't do it with this code specifically. Another project I shipped last week was through some of the kind of, I work on a lot of like low level LLM infrastructure work right now. Recognized the need for a cohesive, really feature rich database of all the model specifications and model metadata for publicly available models. So we collected this 1,200 models. Then you need a giant override system and so all this different stuff. I would have AMP design it. And then there's a list of maybe 9 or 10 public API methods that I got really, really specific about. I really poured my sense of design. I poured my sense of, here's my opinion of how this should look. Here's how I want to use it into those specifications. And then I let go of the implementation underneath as long as it's efficient. And
that makes sense.
That balance is how I've kind of solved that problem of where the edges of each subsystem.
Yeah, I think I understand, and I want to echo that. The more you use these models and these tools, and you realize there's an overeagerness to engineer things more than needed, right? And I usually say something like, "What's the one thing that we need to do, to make this more secure?" Right? And then you usually get like, "Okay, well, out of all the things I could choose, here's the thing." So I want to call out some questions and comments coming in from the crowd. Anthony says, not a question, but a kudos. One thing I love about AMP is when you close out the agent, gives you the option to jump right back in with the previous context. Something I wish Claude had. Agree with you on that. And then Guillermo saying the difference that just asking it to think through the changes before coding is big. For bigger changes in larger code bases, I find a similar 5-to-1 ratio of markdown to code to be almost a base necessity. So everybody in the crowd, tell us what your markdown to code ratio is. And we'll call out some of them.
The last one is interesting, right? That back in the day, like 9 months ago, right, you would have chain of thought prompting, right? Or you would say, please describe the plan, and then think through all of this, get this stuff in the context window, and then you end up with a good solution. And I'm while reading Guillermo's message here, I'm thinking most of the newer generation of models, say 2 to 3 months old, right? They're all doing reasoning now and have thinking blocks, and it's all happening in there. And still, like, I think you still get better results by having them go through this, but I would say the scope has kind of increased, where you're more like, hey, plan this out, and then we jump to an implementation, and you don't have to do the first describe what curl is and then do blah blah blah. But it's interesting, and I'm reading this because I'm now wondering, will this go away, and the thinking and reasoning will do all of it? I don't know, maybe.
I think the planning phase is almost as much for the agent as it is for the human.
Okay, but then answer me this: like, if you have a workflow, such a sophisticated workflow, right, with the markdown files, it's so tempting and so easy to not read those files.
True.
Right?
It is.
Like, you're like, now it's there. It's 200 lines of markdown file. And then you jump and what I want to know is, like, do you go, because it's work, do you go through the work of making sure that you understand what's in those files? Or
this is the key. Yeah. This is the discipline you have to have when using agents. You're right, because the tempting thing to do is be like, it seems like I put a lot of work into that plan.
Yeah.
You got it. I think Greg calls this out. I love this. I bet 5-to-1 isn't accurate. There's lots of code being written for you. Find 5-to-1 time and effort sounds right. So I think that's probably actually right.
And it's infinity to 1. That's pretty good. Yeah. Then we don't get anything done. I think some of it depends on the targeted code base that you're writing.
Yeah,
in this case, this is a publicly released package. People depend on this package. I need to maintain backwards compatibility. There's a different bar that I'm aiming for, and a different approach and care that I'm bringing to writing this code. Whereas last week, and this is still kind of the case, it's not fully unreleased. I do a lot of my work publicly on GitHub, but there's a level of, no, this package is still in that, the workshop isn't done yet. There's still going to be some sawdust flying. We're going to make some breaking changes because it's the right thing to do. And that I'm a little looser with, as long as I properly define the outcome that I'm looking for.
Yep.
And as long as I get there, I'll be a little bit looser. Maybe I'll skim it. And then if something does go wrong, I just ask AMP to fix it.
Yeah.
So
fix it after that. So I want to call out some more friends joining from around the world. We've got Ethan from Wales. I've been to Wales. Have you both been to Wales?
No,
not been to Wales.
Wales is great. My wife also went to school in Wales. And Guillermo's calling from Brazil. We saw that. And also Kevin is a Norwegian dialing in from Phoenix. So that's cool. Phoenix.
Is it? Wait a second. Is he a Norwegian in Phoenix, or is he talking about VPN or something?
He's maybe you have a really good reason to VPN into Phoenix.
Yeah. I'm dialing it from Phoenix. Don't tell my government.
I don't want to know why. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's keep rotating. I want to call out one of the fun features of Build Crew, which is we have a leaderboard. So if we could pull up my screen, I want to call out the folks that are currently leading this, and annoyingly Mike is pretty much always in the top 10. So,
but bump the font size, Ryan, by 3 sizes. You want there you go.
Okay, so there's Mike. 1 2 3 4 5. So everybody, once you join Build Crew, then you get an email with an invite to join this leaderboard, and this is just kind of a fun way to keep score about what's going on. So we've got a Diff Maxer award, which is fun. Most lines changed. Derek is just crushing it with almost 300,000 lines of code. Ari is the most messages. He's got Agent Whisper, almost 8,000 messages. Reaper, which is the amount of lines removed, which is kind of fun. And then Inquisitor. So you can see Mike here, 215 threads. not bad. A lot of lines of code there. It'd be
My
interesting.
markdown showing through.
It's marked. Yeah, we should do this. We should analyze the lines of code by
Yes.
file type.
Okay. So if everybody
That'd be
watching,
cool.
your assignment is
That would be cool.
write us a quick script. And we should make a toolbox actually in AMP that analyzes the amount of lines changed per message or markdown. So let's go into Mike's. I'll show you as well. Hey, you need to share some threads. What is happening?
Yeah, I need to get that. A lot of my threads are public. I should need to opt in.
So-
that a
14
little bit better.
followers. How many do I have?
All right. So let's see. Yours, I presume, is you're just Torsten, right?
Yeah. No, Mr. Nugget.
Oh,
Of
Mr.
course. Come on.
Sorry, Mr. Nuggets. This is so. Oh, I'm not
Nice.
following you. Sorry.
Awkward. Awkward.
Okay, but I'll star some of these. Plan invitation for showing cursor beam. So this is kind of fun, y'all. You can star threads, and so I would encourage you. Popped in here, so you start a couple like from Mitchell, which is kind of cool. I'll star Mitchell's as well. This one was a cool. So we've got good profiles. We've got the leaderboard. So join us. I feel like I'm doing pretty well here. I'm number 10 at the moment. I've got a couple that I shared recently. This one got a lot of. It got something like 1,000 bookmarks on X when I posted this, because I was just going in to update my agents.md file. So I think all of you who are doing this are realizing that you really have to maintain your agents.md files. They degrade fast, and you have to remember, like, these things are being included with almost every thread, every message.
Everything. Yeah.
So you make them great. So I just said some of these sections are only really applicable to certain directories of code, because I had one monolithic agents.md file. I said the way that the agent works is that it pulls in the agents.md file for whenever it's working on files. Let's split this out to a top level one and into several files and put them in the relevant directories. Give me your plan for doing this. Don't edit anything. And I do this a lot. Just let's talk for a little while before we do anything. And it just found some really good, splits. All right, there's a root one. Then we've got one in our app folder, which is all about front end components. We've got database stuff. The list goes on. And then this is again where you got to read this stuff and you have this spidey sense, like, no, I don't think that's right. And I just said, in libauth, I read it through because I'm pretty sure, that's what's used for auth. So kind of went through and just did a big, healthy refactor, added some new agents.mds. And I noticed after this, just a general kind of improvement in how AMP was behaving. So
I want to double down on this real quick, or put an exclamation mark behind it, or underline it, or highlight it. There was, I think I had 2 customer interactions in the last week or so.
Okay.
Where on the surface it's like, oh, AMP. We could be talking about any agent here, where it's like, oh, it does this, but then it thinks this, like it would run a build tool, or it would run a formatter or linter or whatever, and then it tries to do this, but it cannot do this, and it reads like a bug, because the user, it didn't work, right? But then when you think about it, the only real solution, there's nothing that I can do as the application developer of the agent, because I cannot tell it that, after this linter, you should double check this other thing. Like, I don't know about your linter, but a lot of this stuff can be fixed by putting it in the agents.md, by telling it about this is how you release a new binary. This is how you test a new binary. This is how you, or something like, Mike, what's the formatter? Mix? Is it mix format or something?
Mix format. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, mix format, right? You could stuff like every time you run Prettier or Go format or mix format, make sure to reread those files, because the old view that you had of this file is now outdated if it was changed. Like that stuff needs to go in the agents.md, because the mods don't yet know, or don't know these particular things about your code base. So Yeah,
Yes.
+1 on Agents MD.
Yeah, just
Yep.
update the files. Remember, this is how we give our agents the spidey sense that
Yeah.
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
have, right?
Yeah.
So I've got some more folks calling in from Pakistan. Awan, good to have you here. Guillermo, who's always in the leaderboard, he says, I love to sneak in late into my day so I can be in the top 5-ish in the 6-hour leaderboard, which I love. And by the way, Tim wants to know where Mr. Nugget comes from. And I want to know too. Reveal all.
Right now,
Right now.
there's nothing to say here. Like, it's just when I was 14 years old, this was like 4 years ago. When I was 14 years old, while hanging out in IRC chats, like me and my friends, we would have to come up with nicknames, right? And I would hang out in, I don't know if anybody knows this QuakeNet, which was a big IRC server back. Yeah, there you go. And you had, a lot of names like the guys in Reservoir Dogs, like Mr. Pink, Mr. Black, and whatnot. Yeah. And you had other funny nicknames. And I didn't like my old one anymore, and I was looking for a new one. And I thought Nugget is a funny word, and putting Mr. in front of it, I don't know, like that seems funny. So I just used this, and I've been.
And it's
at
stuck.
first it was camel case, like big, the 2 capital M, and then over time it got lowercase, and
now it is important.
I honestly. So when I got married, you have to go to the what's the word, where you have to sign official papers, not church or anything, but you have to sign the papers. And we would sit down with the public servant, and he was like, okay, blah blah blah, Mr. So and so, and then Mrs. So and so, let me take down your date of birth and whatnot. And then there was this really awkward moment where he asked my wife, like, and can I write down your email address? And my wife's email address is, first name, last name @gmail.com. And then he's like, what's your email address? And you go, Mr. Nugget @gmail.com. And he's like, can you repeat? They're not English speakers. So then you spell it out. And it's just
Mr. Nugget.
Yeah. MR Nugget. And it's awkward.
Oh my God. I laugh every time I see it. So I think
you're officially forever bound to Mr. Nugget @gmail.com.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Ralph says we're raising a puppy for the Irish guide dogs for the blind, and he's called Nugget. So
nice.
That's a good name.
That's a good name, but a good reason to be called Nugget. But there you go. And Awan's going to host an AMP cafe, which sounds fun. All right, so we're going to keep rolling. If you are just joining, tell us where you're calling in from. Pop it in the comments. We'll read it out. Also, we were talking about our markdown to code ratio, or maybe you're planning to code ratio, however you want to think about it. If you want to think a time to time ratio, share that out. We'll call it out. I want to share something I've been thinking a lot about that I hope is helpful to everybody in the crowd. So if you go ahead and share my screen, I'm going to walk you through some stuff that I've been building. So I'm going to explain first of all what it is so you can understand. So let me make this a little bit bigger. So Grace is an agent. She helps people through divorce. And what I wanted to do is build a chat onboarding, right? So I have there's a lot of complex forms in Untangle. Forms are just not very fun to fill out. So I thought I want to build a chat flow to do this. Now, I could have a complex system prompt to do this. I could build my own state machine. But I thought, I just want to try some of the off-the-shelf stuff out there and see how good it is. So, Grace welcomes you and says, where are you at? So I'll just say, I'm thinking about getting divorced, right? Now, what's happening in the background? See over here, right? So we've got now in the background, we've got an observable workflow here. So this looks pretty gnarly, right? So this is like, I don't know how many steps, 25 plus steps. Let me zoom in and show you what's going on here. Okay, so you can see here that the ask divorce status step was just completed, right? Now, what is this stuff? So this is Mastra. This is completely free, right? So this is open source. I'm running this locally. You don't have to use their cloud. And I want to see how good is this stuff, essentially agent framework. So you've got what are called workflows. So I built out this workflow, and I'll show you the code in a second. But you've got an ask divorce status step, and then it goes to the next step, which is ask state, right? So now the reason why it's nice to use, an LLM for this workflow is because you don't have to say, number one or number two. Here, I'm going to restart this actually and show you a good example of this. And then I'll restart this over here. Okay. So here, what if I just say, I'm thinking about my options, right? So this is a good example where you want you'd want a workflow that is deterministic, but you want all of the flexibility of a large language model. So you'll notice, okay, if we go back over here, and you do have to refresh this, you'll notice that in the workflow state, it did pass, right? So ask divorce status successfully passed. So this is like a slightly better UI, right? You can visualize it here. So let's keep going, and I'll say, yeah, I live in Connecticut. And I think it's a bug with this where I have to actually refresh the page to see that it progressed. So, okay. The point here is not to show you like how I did all this. The idea is that we're now seeing the beginning of agent orchestration frameworks, right? And Mastra is just one of them. And let me show you the actually code in this, because this is kind of something I've been thinking a lot about. And again, this isn't a commercial for Mastra. This is free. I'm not being paid. This is one of many. But when you use Mastra, you get this directory on the left here. So you've got an agents, steps, a tools, a workflows. So what does this look like in code, right? Let me actually let's make this a little, okay. So I'm gonna go down a little bit. All right, what we've got here is the workflow, right? And there's a couple things about it. There's an input schema and output schema. So it's completely deterministic and typed, right? So you've got the first step. We already went through this ask divorce status step. So let's go to the definition of this. You can see, where did it go? Let's go Control O to go back. Okay. So it's got a name. It's got an input schema, right? We're choosing to bring the user ID in here. We've got an output schema, which is a status, right? Are you thinking about divorce, or are you already getting divorced? And then a resume schema and a suspend schema. So like this gets us into this whole world where we have workflows that can be suspended or resumed, and then you can surface that on the front end, right? And this is like this is not rocket science stuff, right? So this is the message from Grace. And then we instantiate the agent here, right? And then this looks a little bit like a large language model call, right? So you've got the first prompt to this agent, which is the divorce status agent. It determines like, is the user answering, or how are they answering if they didn't say one or two or thinking about it? So I don't want to get too in the weeds here, but go ahead.
It is an agent, no? It's like a sub agent in some sense, right?
Yeah. So let's actually go look at this agent, right? So the divorce status agent, this is the way Mastra defines it, right? So you've got a name, and you've basically got a system prompt, and then you have a model, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
And then what's interesting, so if we go back to the workflow, right? So you say, I've got a step. I want you to ask the divorce status. And then we go in here. Now there's a couple kind of things, like you can say, I want structured output. Okay. I want an enum, which is thinking or filed. And I want to use, thinking budget, etc. So now everyone watching this I don't want to get too in the weeds, because this might be confusing about how this actually works. But the thing I wanted to flag here is that we're seeing pretty good agentic orchestration frameworks begin to appear. And all of this works. Let me go back to all of this works with Next.js and AI SDK, right? Which a lot of folks are using, right? And the last thing I'll say is you've got observability. So you can build all this stuff. And I had built a lot of this for Untangle myself. But you get out of the box observability. So I can actually come down here and see, what actually happened in this call and what was sent, and parse through it. So I think we're in an interesting world where this stuff is getting easier and easier. But I want to ask your two's take on this. Like everyone who's watching, who's thinking about building agents that isn't building a coding agent, do you think we're going to see more of these kind of frameworks pop up? Are they over engineered? Mike, why don't you go first, and then Torsten? I'll go to you.
So I've effectively spent those 9 months building a Mastra in Elixir.
Oh,
And
no way.
yeah.
Ta-da!
So Mastra's great. It's a great place to get started. And the balance when you're building those agents is just what you showed of the deterministic workflow and really how much rope you give the agent to take structured input and produce structured output through either an experience that you're trying to create for the user. And so far, again, kind of what you had showed, it's very sequential.
Yeah.
There's very limited ability for these type of agents to branch off and get creative.
So I will tell you, like, branching and looping is built into Mastra, which is part of the reason I chose it.
Awesome. I think that the world is going to evolve into what I call kind of the higher or more complicated algorithms of, tree of thought, algo of thought, graph of thought, beyond chain of thought. And you're going to see a growth of the sub agent kind of flow.
It's all sub agents. Like, I tweet about this. Like, people say it's an agent, but the truth is, like, an agent is now a collection of 20 sub agents, all using different models.
Correct.
Yeah.
Pulling it all together like a jazz band, right? I love the music metaphor. It's the jazz band coming together. Everybody's playing a different instrument, and being able to orchestrate that to create a great user experience is right where the edge is at right now. And I think what you're doing, I see a lot of inspiration in the work you just showed from the coding agent world, where something like AMP is, a lot further ahead in what it is capable of. But the coding agents are providing a really great frame of reference to those of us building, user experience agents that automate workflows. And that bridge, you see the gap closing. And what you showed was awesome. That's great.
Thanks. I mean, it's built from necessity. Like, you need these tools. Like, you need workflows, you need observability, you need all this. Otherwise you can't build good stuff. And it's still a ton of elbow grease. It just blows my mind.
It is. Very difficult. We could talk about that. I will say, and I see the comment about Mastra versus BAML, but I would say Mastra and BAML are complementary. BAML is more of a LLM inquiry language to make structured calls and then return back more advanced structured outputs.
Oh, interesting.
And BAML can work with Mastra. So take a look into BAML. Yeah. BAML's, I don't want to.
Is it something markdown language? What does it stand for?
It is I don't know what BAML stands for. Okay. It's something markdown language itself. It is its own standalone language that compiles into LLM calls.
Oh,
so very cool stuff. So very advanced.
Let me ask Torsten what he thinks about this, because I do feel, I do feel like these frameworks add latency that I can feel, right? And maybe it's just in my head, and I can look at the trace and see it as well. But Torsten, do you think we're going to see more of these agentic frameworks pop up for people that are not building coding agents, but other agents? Does it matter?
Disclaimer, I have not built any application with these frameworks. I also, looked at LangChain and other frameworks like that last year, and then you kind of realize there's not, like, I can build a lot of this stuff myself. I don't need this. But what I do like about this category of workflow things, and that's the only thing I can add here, is I think it's important to keep the distinction between deterministic code and non-deterministic code
Mm,
important front and center.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I criticized in the past about, sub agents, and why I'm kind of wary of sub agents, encoding agents, is that they are controlled not by deterministic workflows, but by the main agent, and that's not deterministic. And Mike, the prompts you showed earlier, they were super focused, small prompts. But I think there's a danger that a lot of people, they use the main agent as this deterministic thing, and they
Yeah.
assume if I tell it to spawn 51 subagents, it will
Yes.
spawn 51 subagents. And it won't. Like, it might once or twice, but it's not reliable. And what I find fascinating is I do like this idea that we now can do that's non-deterministic, that's fuzzy, but you still need to wire it up and put it in
Yes.
loops and conditions that are deterministic. And
Yes.
if I look
Boundaries.
at this framework, it's about, I guess, automating workflows, right? And if you think
Mhm.
about, say, like a chatbot or whatever, you get some input, and then the user needs to do this and this and this and this. At the end of the day, previously business applications were kind of putting us into these forms and these strict flows, and actually it doesn't matter whether you enter your date of birth first or upload your passport. It does not
Correct.
matter.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if it's that stuff doesn't. What matters is that the result comes out and that it's all validated.
Yes.
And I think now we're starting to be freed from this, where
Yes.
like, it does not matter. At the end of the day, you can even hold up a post-it to the webcam with your name on it, and it should work. Versus,
Amen.
oh, you used a capital letter in the
Yeah.
whatever field. So
Yep.
to be super philosophical about it, I'm excited about stuff that allows us to use the determinism of that computers are good at, and that also lets us allow to use
Yes.
the power of fuzziness that these
Mhm.
models are good at.
And then you get this beautiful user experience, like,
Mhm.
and I
Yeah.
had hand coded that determinism before, but it's like you're rebuilding, core protocols that every single
Yeah.
developer,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and so Master has memory out of the box, right? And all these things, you just turn it on, and I just think about how much easier this is going to be for all of you watching it. Like, try out these tools, see how they feel, and realize you don't have to write all this from scratch anymore, unless you
Yeah.
are masochistic. So
Everyone should go build an agent by hand.
do that first.
Take the time to do it. It'll really click. That light bulb moment will come, and
Yeah.
they're not going away. We're gonna have a lot of agents in our future, and the better you get at it now, the better you're gonna be.
Amen.
I'll make one last thought to
Do it.
share. There's going to be this balance, I think, in the future as inference continues to get a little bit less expensive. But my hypothesis that our need for agents is going to outpace our ability to pay for inference, because an agent that can spin off 100 sub-agents, 1,000 sub-agents, gets very expensive if you let it go wild. So we're going to have to figure out how to balance deterministic agents, state machines. There are other AI algorithms, behavior trees, hierarchical task networks, been around 30 years.
Yep.
With the LLM non-deterministic flows, and they need to work in harmony together.
Amen.
That's my hypothesis for the future, and what I've been spending the last 9 months building. So happy
Awesome.
to chat more about it, but it's an exciting future.
It is. I can't believe we're alive right now. Torsten, Mike, appreciate your time. You're both busy, valuable people, so I appreciate you being here. Thanks to our producers behind the scenes for doing this well. Thanks to everyone for joining. Want to call out Yazin, said he's joining from Austria, not Australia.
Nice.
We have the Alps, not kangaroos. So everybody, thanks for joining. Thanks for watching. And we will see you not next week, because Torsten and I are in San Francisco, but the week after we'll be back with Build Crew Live. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.